This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, Jonathan. Can you guys able to hear me or
Yep.
okay, thank you. Just trying to confirm whether I missed it. So today I thought like we will, given the last 3 meetings or so, we have gone through multiple different considerations that we want to look. So I thought we can start discussing what we want to see for this year. I just put a kind of open slide so that we can do a working session today. I don't know how I can. So my basic thinking is out of this team's discussion, right? Can we come up with some priorities? But you, as a team, want to see that what we want to accomplish for this year. Specifically, I'm kind of looking what specific metrics we want to work so that we can start having deeper discussion on the two particular topics, right? One thing we discussed is PUE replacement, and also there's a lot of different discussion on even water usage and carbon modeling, how we want to help, and even red phase, all these things, right? Before going there, right, what we want to pick up some specific topics so that way we can start spending more time on that particular topic. Any things that as a team you think what we want to put?
So this is Deb. I've said this a bunch of times, so I feel like I'm kind of repeating myself, but what I think we should do is align with regulatory requirements and see what we can do to best help OCP members prepare for those requirements.
So, Deb, apologies on not being on the previous calls in this one. Apologies, everyone, as well. Just joining for the first time today, just to get a bit better understanding. Are you referring to the task force and climate-related financial disclosures, the TCFD, or are you referring to the CSRD for sustainability for data centers?
Oh, first of all, can you just introduce yourself? Maybe we should do a quick round of intros.
Yeah, apologies. Yeah, so yeah, my name is John Clark. Previously a commercial director for a colo data center in the UK.
Nice.
I'm now working for Dern's mechanical engineering, doing data center design and consultancy, and I'm specialising in sustainability as a sustainability lead for them in the data center space. Previously been engaged a little bit of OCP in the background, and thought to be useful today just to join this call to understand a bit more about the work you guys are doing and how this framework is sort of working to align and move together. So just keen just to see what the key topics and discussions are to help on this.
Thank you, Jonathan, for joining.
Welcome.
Welcome to the team.
It's great to have you. So I was referring very specifically to the ones that I knew are the EU Energy Efficiency Directive for data centers.
So that's the ISO 5001, or are you talking about the new 22237, I think it is, with the declaration of that as well?
So I'm like not super good on checking these names. So
okay.
There's an EU EED, Energy Efficiency Directive.
Yeah.
part of the, in support of the European Green Deal. And so there's what they're calling a recast of this, which increases coverage and targets data center operations.
Yeah, I'm slightly familiar with this one as well. So I know where you're coming from. I know they've also got to now start looking at as well renewable energy integration as part of that piece as well, with a percentage mix being
Correct. That's
sustainable.
what they call the REF, renewable energy factor.
Yeah.
And they also have these IT equipment, energy efficiency, and energy utilization. I mean, I don't know where to get the information on exactly what is required. I have a slightly out of date list that I've shared with this group before, but what I've been told through the grapevine is some of the items on that list actually did not make it into the final directive.
Yeah, I know some of this is still currently being agreed. I know some of this is currently going for the German Parliament at the moment. In the background, so I don't think there's quite a finalised version just yet of this. There's a lot of key proposals that are looking to amend within those bills, and then they're looking to then sort of get some further clarification on the back of that. So I've not yet seen a detailed summary of actually everything that is a requirement at the moment, but I do know, got a fair indication of what's coming down the line, but I haven't seen it set out in stone just yet.
So, Jonathan, are you familiar with the EU regulatory requirements? We have not seen the copy yet. I think Jeff, you requested Mohan to follow up and get a copy, right?
So I can give a little bit of an update on that. So I did get an illegal copy. Somebody forwarded to me. We did not pay for it. It did not include the ones I was most interested in, which is around this utilization piece. It did include PUE, did include renewable energy factor. I can go back and look. But, meanwhile, I asked, because what I was told is that, yes, there is this whole cottage industry or whatever that sells these specs, but if it's part of a regulatory requirement, they can't, you need to be able to obtain it for free. So, but with, I asked within Intel if I can share it. And in general, I would say people were not comfortable with me sharing what I was forwarded. And just to be clear, what I was forwarded has a lot of Turkish text on the front of it and then reverts back to English. So, it came through some channel through Turkey and somehow found its way to me. So, yeah, Jeff, you had mentioned perhaps you were going to look and see if you could get a look at these documents as well. Jen said she was willing to pay for it. So that would be another possible avenue. But from what Jonathan just said, it's not clear that the final is decided. I had kind of heard that it was very close to decided, but it sounds like maybe it is more.
But even if it's not final, right, we would like to understand what they are really looking into that, right? I think we were kind of
looking, they're saying, and I have not heard that this moves, that people will need to report in May of 2024, right? So that, basically for this year, right, at this point. So there's, I don't think they can change it too much.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we do need to understand a little bit in depth. I think so Jonathan, are you familiar with the documents or?
Yeah, I think the ones you're referring to, I think, are the ones for the smaller sites, or sites over 500 kilowatts in the background. So I've got some familiarity with them. I don't think the rules go that far just yet into that regard. I think it's as I'm just trying to make sure I'm reading this correctly in the background at the moment. So I know there's quite a lot coming, and I think the main ones I've seen so far have been around the CSRD and the TCF and the TCFD as well, on the measurements requirements for the power, the water, and for the carbon. But that's mainly for sites that are over sort of like 500 employees. That's affected most of the hyperscalers that I've seen so far. I know the lower ones for the colo ones are starting to come into effect from an ISO, but I haven't seen the other ones just yet. Starting to come into effect. But I'm talking specifically from the UK marketplace as well at the moment, because that's where my knowledge is coming from. So I might not be correct in some of the information that's coming out from a European perspective just yet. So that's why I'm just trying to get up to speed on this as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think what we are kind of looking, maybe let's finish the intro. I think even Jonathan is here, and it'll be good to know each other, right? I'm leading this work group. I'm Sami Nachimuthu. I work for Intel. My basic background is a lot of firmware related items, and with this work group, we want to identify what we want to focus on, the metrics which will help on the sustainability related areas, and what additional enhancement that we need to do for the firmware side or the hardware side to get this information out of the system so that you can really able to implement the metrics, right? That is a basic focus. We want to get it accomplished.
Okay.
And Shruti or Jeff, you want to give any? Or Deb? Anybody? Want to give us some just quick background about you?
Some network issues, so I'm.
I see, yeah, you're coming and going, Shruti.
So I'll just quickly, Deb Bernstein, a long career in computer architecture, computer design, networking as well. Switched over the past few years, I've been working on sustainability, trying both on the software side and on the data center side.
Thank you, Deb. Jeff, you want to go ahead and give an quick intro?
Sure. Yeah. So Jeff Otter with Hewlett Packard Enterprise. I'm also co-chair of the OCP Hardware Management Group and the DMTF's Redfish Forum. So mostly interested in the connections here with the metrics and reporting and trying to surface as much of the data that we need as possible, so that we can take the next steps of actually measuring and then actually doing something about all this.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Shruti, if you're still on, you want to give a quick intro? Looks like she's having some network issues. Okay.
Yeah, can you folks hear me now?
Yes, we can. Can you hear us?
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Hi, Jonathan. This is the first time I'm meeting you too. This is Shruti Sethi here in Azure, and I'm mainly with Azure's storage services and I look a lot into the forward-looking strategy. Focuses right now in the forward-looking strategy is sustainability. So my work involves quite a bit of intersection of sustainability and data center, including power efficiency, carbon, etc. And previously, I was actually with Intel, so I do come from a compute background and currently heavily involved between data center and sustainability.
Cool.
So that's where I am. Good to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet everyone as well. Thank you for the introductions. And again, apologies, I've not been on calls prior to now, trying to make it an effort to be on this call going forward.
Okay, good, thank you. Welcome. So anything else, Steph, you want to add to the aligning and requirements? I agree with you. We do need to get that alignment. Let us get some of the materials what is proposed, and let us. Yes, part of this year we need to make sure that we are really like we are not duplicating, we are complementing it, right? So I agree. Yeah. Anything else, Deb, from your side?
No, I mean, based on what has been shared so far, that is the thing that, comes up strongest for me um, is that, once something is under regulation, that standard is set, right? Like, for example, we talked about PUE, some other things, but once it's under regulation, then, I don't see any place to well, maybe we could just back up. I mean, I'm not sure that if our goal is to be innovative or if our goal is to simply give guidance. Sort of seemed from Mohan, he perhaps like just taking the PUE as an example, perhaps he wanted to give guidance that would give people less capability to game the system. I think actually that was very much a theme that he had. Just to give our guidance so that, our OCP members won't be gaming the system, but I'm actually not even 100% clear if that's what we want to do.
Yeah, I think from my view of this, coming into this, from what some of the discussions I've had in the past with other data center operators and other people from the IT industry as well, is the fact that I think if we're going to support other operators within the OCP framework, it needs to be advice on one of the key things they need to be looking at, be it sort of renewable energy integrations or cooling optimizations and life cycles, or sort of efficiencies throughout their sites, and then aligning those with how most RFPs are aligning as well from a commercial basis, which is probably going to be the main driver for them as well, which is going to come down to scope 1, 2, and 3, and then looking at it from that benefit so they can understand how that's going to be affecting them from what their clients are going to be looking at. And that's how I've been very much approaching this from previously managing a site, but also then having discussions within the wider network as well.
Yeah, I think you would bring a super lot of perspective based on the roles you've played. I just would like to add, so for scope 3, right, for embodied carbon, there's another work stream that's been working on that, and I'm in that, and Shruti is in that work stream as well. We do have a white paper if you'd like to take a look at it. I can share a link to it in
if
the
you could do afterwards, that'd be helpful, just for me to have a read through, because I know scope 3 is obviously a bit of a Pandora's box currently at the moment, so it's not a straightforward issue at all. But something I've been looking into quite hard as well over the last couple of weeks. Within that, but I mean, most data center operators, scope 1 and 2 is obviously we are most people's scope 3 or scope 2, depending on their alignment within their IT infrastructure.
Right. So I'm going to put a link. What we were told is that you should be able to add comments in the document based on the link. If you can't, you can send your comments to me, and I will get them incorporated, or at least reviewed. And I'm giving my email in the chat as well as the link. So feel free to take a look. You know, what we've heard so far is that it's extremely ambitious, which I think is okay if we start out with a, you know, kind of a North Star and then, you know, pull back into what's doable and move, you know, move towards the North Star over time.
Yeah, because I think we agree with that, because we just need to be careful, because a lot of these data centers are now looking at new technologies and new footprints about how they do stuff, and it's a case of how fast or what the challenges are for them to be implemented. And obviously there's a capital and OPEX that they need to be looking at for those changes to be made, and obviously seeing what that case is as well for those as well from a sustainability scope. So yeah.
You're talking about like liquid cooling, for example.
Yeah, no, I'm very familiar with the dark arts of immersive, of single phase and dual phase cooling as well. So, yeah.
But so perhaps you're referring to something else then?
Yeah, I was referring to sort of data centers from a sustainability piece of how they implement like immersive cooling. What are the challenges for them to do that, but also what the current, a lot of it comes down to their IT makeup as well, or what their customer base is as well, whether or not that should be relevant, or what other changes they need to be looking at.
So I do believe OCP has other work streams on liquid cooling.
Yeah, I'm part of those ones as well.
Okay, very good. Yeah,
I've
I don't think that.
joined quite a few recently. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to super specifically focus on that. We definitely did not in the embodied carbon slide. I did want, so Sammy, you typed in enabling the ability to compare different sustainability metrics. So what we
So
came.
Shruti put in the chat, so I copied it so that we can have a discussion on it. So
I see. So what we came to for the embodied carbon work stream is that they're basically not going to be directly comparable. So we're going to share information about how the number was derived and put a grade on that so that people would be able to say, okay, this piece of IT equipment is so many kilograms of embodied carbon, and that assessment was a grade C, and its deficiencies were this, this, and this. But somebody else is going, you know, for their competitive IT equipment, gave a higher number, but their grade was like a grade B, right, on an A through F scale. I'm just making this up, right? But
Yeah.
you know, it was much more in-depth analysis, better data, et cetera, so that you know, it's not an apples to apples comparison.
I think if we can help enforce that or get that metrics approved, because I know looking at embodied carbon from an IT footprint is never easy.
Yeah.
When you're taking into part, this is where scope 3 comes part of this, where you're looking at it from, as you said, it's trying to look at it from the supply chains, the supply routes, where perhaps their silica comes from, where they're looking at it from. Are they also importing nickel and gold and iron? Is that then part of their sort of server bills within that? And is that all being taken apart as part of that overall carbon for that piece of item, or even down to like the concrete level as well?
Right. So we did not yet get to the data center structure itself for embodied. So we did not look at the concrete side of it.
So
For
you're
as
the concrete, the steel, the water, sort of like even like the how the cooling's done.
right. So again, there's kind of like there's the operational piece and the embodied piece, right? So, for first stab, what we focused on was two different pieces of IT equipment, two different profiles of IT equipment. So the first one would be integrated circuits, so be they SSDs, DDRs, CPUs, right? And then the other one we did was 8 hard drives.
So you've got the embodied carbon for, so that makes perfect sense from CPU and hard drives, but you then need to also then do the same thing again for the build, also the embodied carbon from a difference of the renewable source, be it from electricity, gas or wind, because that also then has different embodied
So
carbon.
we do for embodied offer them the opportunity to report both location-based and market-based for every step in the along the creation of the device, right?
Cool.
So, in theory, in the richness of time, you would be able to have two numbers, right? One that is purely location based all the way along, right? And then one that is, pulled in market based wherever it was applicable, right?
So the overall facility can then work out how much carbon they need to either offset or what their overall facility then is to actually, after a number of years, and then break that down to achieve their goals.
Right, so that I would consider sort of out of scope for that white paper. It's more, that would be more another more encompassing white paper or something that, talks to data center owners for how to pull in more items.
Yeah, apologies, I've taken this bit side stream, so yeah, apologies.
Yeah. So, but for this work stream, we're much more talking about operational, and we,
So
we
operations
certainly
within the data center, or operations from an IT perspective?
within the so
It's overall data center, right? So you have overall data center, and within that, what are the things that we need to be considering as what metrics we should be looking into that, right?
Yeah, so you've got PUE. I'd also put UUE, so the water usage effectiveness, and also the carbon as well. So yeah.
So we had like 3 hours discussion with every single different things. I didn't have a chance to summarize. I need to get the more slides to summarize all the different metrics. But what got me some of the things that we like, that's why I'm trying to put a priority for this year versus next year. We can put a lot more, right? For me, I think it looks like, can we at least complete what is the new PUE need to look like, right? Whether we want to call it PUE or UE or whatever the new name, whatever we want to give, right?
I've heard in the grapevine that sites will need to be going forward, be measured on a monthly basis. So it'd actually be designed for the entire site load and not just for the IT load.
Right.
Is that
so I think
a regulatory statement?
No, this is from a government source. I had this from.
Yeah, so it would be regulated.
Yeah, so we're looking at a regulated PUE, which would have to be reported on a monthly basis rather than a design PUE, which is currently what the marketplace is based on.
Yeah, so not if you want to do a monthly basis, right? Do you want to measure, accumulate, and report it, right? But still, you need to define what is the sampling period, right?
Yeah.
It can be weekly or days or whatever the things. You can do it, and you can say final reporting need to be monthly, right?
Yeah.
Again, that's why I'm kind of want to have as a team, right? if we decide we want to go and expand on this, we need to start looking at what are the things we need, what we have today, like what Jeff brought up last week, right? We have certain things already defined the red phase, but it's already available, but it's optional. That we need to make it as OCP profile to make it as a required for sustainability. But we need something more than what is not available. We need to go and define that, right? But before going and defining it, can we align on a, if you're aligning that we want to define a new PUE matrix, what does that need to look like, right? Is it we want, what are the things going to be in the fan power or non-IT power versus IT power? We need to agree on
I would just
the
say, again,
list of items, right?
before we start with PUE, we need to understand what will be required for PUE from a regulation point of view, right?
Right, right.
So that, that I would say it would be number one. So that, anything that we do would be to align, with, because OCP, we can say whatever we want, but if people are being regulated to do things a certain way, they will, of course, do the regulation one before they even look at what we say. So that's what I would say, first of all. If we decide PUE is the one that's most interesting to us, let's understand what the regulation is for that, and then understand what it would mean to enhance that regulation and how we would go about proposing, for future, right? The regulation
Right.
now, they're all scrambling to get for 2024 reporting for the EU. But, for 2 or 6 years down the line, when we want it enhanced, what can we feed into the folks setting the regulation to give an updated PUE?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Deb. I think I'm also trying to see how do we close this, right? There's EU regulatory requirements, and also do we have other regulatory requirements like even US side or even APEC side, right?
So are you also going to look at like the uptime institution as well, or like CEDA
Yes,
regulations of what they're looking at as well?
yes, we are definitely, there's a little bit of a problem because, from the point of view of this working group, because Intel is also a member of the Green Grid, and um, we're working with the consultant uptime as well at the Green Grid, but I'm not allowed to, we need to keep the Green Grid information, only to Green Grid members. But yes, absolutely. The information I have sent previously about the EU requirements all came from Uptime Institute. So, yes.
So they are
No.
separate bodies, right? Still.
Yeah, no, Uptime Institute is a very separate body to obviously CEDA as well. I know they've got a very similar code of ethics and standards of what they get data
Which
centers to
one?
work to.
What is the name?
Yeah, CEDA. You got Uptime Institution and CEDA.
CEDA. How do you spell it?
CEEDA.
Okay. So they basically define what is the periodic requirement for reporting as well as what is need content in that report, right?
Yeah, they help with the definition of what that measurement should look like and part of that
Right.
certification for those sites afterwards. So, yeah.
Right. So I think I'm kind of looking for some volunteers here, right? Who can spend some time and come back with say like here is the things currently already required for regulatory requirements.
So
So,
again, we are stuck on the specs have a cost. and have not for the EU at
Right.
least.
Right.
I got something, like I said, the weird Turkish um, side channel. But it basically and then there's what I've heard through the Green Grid, which has overlap with Uptime Institute as far as the people about what they're doing for PUE. But I've just heard that. So all the information I have is either I shouldn't have gotten, or it's just discussion and I'm not allowed to share it here as of right now.
Can I ask a quick question though? Just Deb, apologies for this one. I understand, but I really don't. I understand what the Green Grid's trying to do to provide green renewable energy, which is absolutely fine. All data centers will do that. The PUE metrics though are slightly different in their alignment. For that is normally down to the site's design and operational efficiency within their cooling infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
and what that then looks like per site, per development, and how they're looking to then do their cooling for the IT load. So are we looking to advise on the IT load and what that cooling looks like depending on the work that's been driven out of it? Or are you looking at, yeah, sorry, there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry.
So what we are saying is current PUE definition is total, total DC energy divided by total IT energy, right?
Yep.
Now we want to, it is now trending towards 1, right? 1.08 or something like that, right?
Well,
Is-
if you, for the largest data centers, they're reporting 1. I think, again, going back to Uptime Institute, they will say that much more typical you would see would be around 1.4, 1.5.
Yeah, I mirror that as well, 1.4, 1.5, but with the new cooling infrastructures coming in, you can see loads coming down to 1.3, 1.2, 1.1. But again, it comes down to the cooling that is being operated in the sites and how that's being managed effectively. So what
I
type of
think
BMS system or D system they're using to help optimize that?
there's two problems we are saying there, right? When we are able to put a newer processor and new high performing systems, right? Instead of PUE going down, it's going up.
It depends on how they're doing it though. This is the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right,
if they're doing it in a water cooled or an immersive tank, for example, and they've got the workload and the density to do that, effectively their power might go up, but their cooling will actually go down. But also they're operating at different thermal temperatures as well. So this is where
right.
it gets. This is
So
where it gets different.
that's why we are saying there's define a new matrix that is total IT energy. This is whatever
Yeah.
in the bottom, it goes to the top. And what is total computational energy, right?
Yep.
And then we can say bucket certain things like, hey, here is anything to do with the coding goes into the bucket of non-IT equipment, or anything related to the power or regulators and other things, right? VRs and other things goes to the non-IT equipment. Then you're really focusing on the IT equipment part, right? Either processor, GPUs, or whatever the things doing the memory or something like that, right?
It depends on the site though, because it also depends on their backups for Power and Grid, and if they're an N+1 or an N+N site type configuration as well. How much back-end infrastructure they've got, which probably go into a blue area as well, etc.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But I think my question as a team here, right? Do we want to work on this and define and expand it, and finally gonna come to an alignment, right? These are the things we want to say: what is IT equipment, what is non-IT equipment, right? The blue and green. If we don't have the definition of what is inside, then we cannot align as a OCP. What we want to, at the end of the day, as OCP system, when we take it as sustainable ready systems, right? what do we want to say that we need to have?
I think they need to have ability to have from a carbon facility footprint, what's the current embodied carbon from day one? What's it running at the moment, where they can pick up the feeds through via a monitoring system, and then how they can optimize that then moving forward, or what that looks like so they can then report on it accurately.
That's only for carbon, right?
They would need to do this not just for, no, they would need to do this for power, for carbon, and for water.
Right. So you want to really like account for total IT. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to consume energy and how the energy is produced, right?
Yeah.
That
So
is
it's how that.
Yeah, that is going at a data center level, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you want to make an improvement on top of that, you need help at system level. What do you want to do, right? I think that is as a OCP, right? You are building systems, platforms.
Yeah.
The question is, what you need to have in that within that platform in order to have this higher vision of at the data center level. I want to represent it, but at a system level or rack level, what do you need to have?
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think that's the question we want to answer at some point, right?
It's something I've been tasked to develop as an actual product that will help define that at the moment. It's something I'm looking to do, funnily enough.
Correct.
So yeah.
Right. So yeah, go ahead, Smriti.
So I was just going to say, so one thing to add is, so if I'm not wrong, a while back there was like another metric that was total power usage effectiveness that I think sort of did this work better that we are talking about, but it never sort of caught on due to problems with how do you do the measurements.
Yeah,
So
there was a pushback on the industry because total power unit effectiveness basically took the entire site's total power.
right.
So say, for example, you've got a site that's using 1 megawatt of power. Effectively, with the N+1 in an N+1 configuration, you might only have an IT load of, let's say, 500 kilowatts. You're keeping back a little bit because you've also then got a UPS systems and maintenance running in the background, so you're never ever running at full load. But if you take it from that perspective, your PUE would then be well up into the twos. But if you take it from an IT load facility, of actually how that looks like, you can then have a design facility which then is operating at 1.4, 1.5. So the total PUE didn't take off the industry because it was then calling them out that their design was inefficient. So that was some of the challenges they had at that point.
So no, but the challenge was it just with representation? Because my understanding was the challenge was with actually being able to measure.
Bit of both. The problem was that they don't have enough. If you do not have smart PDUs or abilities within the site to monitor it down to the correct levels, you cannot monitor it. So it's only more recently now with smart PDUs that they've been able to start doing that more accurately. Prior to that, they couldn't. They were never able to do it effectively.
How
Yes.
common
One
are
thing,
the PDUs at this point? The good ones.
What are you
Sorry,
saying?
Deb,
What is
say
the
again?
efficiency?
I thought I just heard that the stumbling block was that a lot of people had old PDUs, so they would not be able to make that work.
The stumbling block was that a lot of older sites wouldn't be able to measure this effectively. So if you didn't have the capabilities within the site, depending on where the power was coming into, to effectively monitor and report on that data, or yeah, it came down to some of the age of the infrastructure and the age of the facility, and also their ability to accurately get that data through. And some of the older sites, which was, let's say, are over 8 years old, for example, would struggle with that data set, being able to provide it.
Okay, and so that's still the case, like they would have, this would only, that's what I was trying to understand, is if the industry has moved forward with the PDUs, or if we're
The
just
industry's moved forward with the PDUs 100% because you're now actually able to monitor it down to the outlet level effectively. Prior
Yeah,
to that, you'd do it probably at a rack level or even at a sort of like pod level, depending on how it was being done.
yeah, I think that's why we kind of discussed a static versus a dynamic, right? If you don't have mechanism to measure, can we put some static numbers? But somehow we need to represent that as part of your final output, right? Yes, I'm reporting a number, but that is static. It's calculated. It's not really measured, right? So
What I'm wondering, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so what I'm also kind of thinking, right? In the future, if you define the fans and VRs and whatever we want to put in the non-IT bucket, right? If there is a mechanism to measure it, then we can say in the future we're going to have a dynamic measurement, but existing system we are going to say maybe partially dynamic, partially static, but somehow the number need to reflect that whether it's representing static or dynamic. Right? Good, Shruti.
No, the one thing that I was sort of trying to understand was when I basically raised this TUE is whether this would, already do the tasks that we are trying to achieve. And, like we were discussing, if the industry is sort of gotten more refined, so now we can actually do the measurements. So should we maybe once look at this metric before we completely define a new one?
I agree.
Yeah,
I think we just need to define this one first. And just to add on to this, we would then need to understand where the electricity was being procured from, so you can actually then work out actually how much carbon's being added onto this as well, and what the overall site infrastructure would be to then give them a sort of that metrics. So yeah, but I agree. We need to just define this first.
yeah. So basically define how the PUE is done today, clarify it, and make sure whether that can be able to measure the current PUE, right? Is that right?
Yeah, define how it's currently being done, and then what that will look like then moving forward on like a active basis. Yeah.
I think Mohan had some of the things in his slide. I believe he was giving multiple different flavors, but I think we need to come back and look at it and maybe we need to have a focused discussion on a PUE and what is done, what is the opportunity there that we need to go and define it. Maybe spending
Just
some
to
time.
add a little bit more complexity to this conversation as well, if you do a site load test and you say you do the PUE and you base it at the site working at 100% efficiency, you will have let's say you have a PUE at optimum level of, let's say, 1.4. If the site's not at full capacity and you've only got site half filled and you're still running the same cooling infrastructure, but it's not being run as efficiently, you might have the site PUE drop down to 1.7. If the site is only being, say, 30% utilized, your PUE will actually still be affected if you're still running the same IT cooling infrastructure, depending on how it's, unless it's being modeled and sort of like defined. And that is one of the complexities of the site. So you need to understand how much the site actual load is in comparison to what the site design cooling load is for that PUE to be effective. Sorry.
Yeah, that's good point. I think
actually.
I know I
I
can
think
go into a
that's
site right now. Yeah, sorry.
right. Yeah. Various site load points. Right. How is that currently available? How it is reported, and yeah, I think that getting the clarity will be really helpful, right? I think we know I think some of the discussion that we had was people are doing dynamic and again static and various load points, because current metrics does not say like which load point, right? That's why we kind of put like, hey, do we want to put a 50% load level, or do we want to put it to various load levels? If you want to say that as a metrics, we need to say PUE 50 or PUE 30 or something like that, right? So that people know. I think same thing. I think Shruti is asking, right? Can I compare it, right? Otherwise, yes, people are reporting it, but it's not apple to apple comparison. We are not going to have the same comparison, right?
Yeah, I think if you can get that level of data and they are forced to share that level of data, that would then give a much better definition of where they currently are and how we can then support them in moving forward. So, yeah.
Right. So the other thing, again, I'm trying to see whether do we want to even spend any time now, or now means like in the future meetings, right? Do we want to, even though we are not fully baked on all the regulatory, all the details?
I think you need to include the M&E department as well. I know you've got fans in there from an air and liquid cooling, but you also need to include the M&E department as well, which is
What
obviously
is
how the
that?
site's the mechanical and electrical engineering. So that's how the site's been put together in the back end.
Mechanical,
So
and what
now,
is it?
So the M&E.
now to design a site for some future.
So if you were to design a site for the future, which is something I've looked into doing, depending on the power, also depending on what IT load you can be doing, you could do it completely differently to how you've done a historical data center site. You could do it on a much smaller footprint. You can look at new technologies. You can look at district heating solutions. You can look at heat recapture. You can look at solar voltaic. You can look at wind. You can look at all different types of solutions to do it in a far different environment with different electrical engineering and with different sort of like principles being attached to it, and also capturing the entire data point from start to finish to then give you that visibility.
Yeah, that will give you based on where you're going to operate and where you're going to be more, what do you call, less carbon footprint and other things, right?
Yeah.
Again, I think what I'm kind of looking is, again, this box. Do we want to spend time this year, or we want to first complete the other activities that we are saying here, right?
I think we complete the alignment of the data first,
Right.
and get their requirements in, because I know PUE is subject to change at the moment. Because within the industry, PUE is a bit of it's got a bit of a bad rap at the moment, because it's been basically quite heavily abused by quite a lot of sites in the past. So I think we just need to get those requirements first off from the data metrics point before we go down the PUE, because I know water use efficiency is coming even more prevalent to the power in certain countries and in certain locations, as is the carbon as well. And that's something else we just need to, so it's a case of looking at all three in tandem. And as Shruti was saying earlier, apologies if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, perhaps that will then align back to the total power for the site, then coming a bit more back to basics. So that will also take into account not just the IT load, but also the site facilities as well.
That's why I'm kind of, when I look at all these things, right, what we are saying is we need to go back and look at what is it currently defined and understand. Once we have that clarity and that complete understanding, then we can define what need to be added or additional item need to be included. Is that right?
Yeah, from my side.
Right.
Could you, Jonathan, write up a couple of paragraphs or a couple of bullet lists?
On, yeah, or anything in particular?
Well, I would say sort of what you just said verbally about,
On
you know,
sustainability. Yeah.
these high
Okay.
order sustainability question. Because I think for me, if I understood, you know, I think maybe if we could all kind of agree on that, like long-term vision of what, you know, what we need. And I guess there's sort of a couple of different buckets, you know, there's the existing data centers and then there's the, you know, existing data centers that are going to be, you know, very much, you know, that are going to be invested in. And then there's the brand new data centers, right? And it's probably very different.
Yeah, I think there is. Yeah, there's a big difference. There's quite a gulf between them at the moment from what is the existing and how they get updated where possible, what the brand new ones look like, and it also then comes down to, ironically, it comes down to what they're looking to do. Is it a case you've got an AI-defined data center that is looking at really high density compute and that is perhaps built out for something like that, which could be very different to general SME medium to high enterprises that are looking at much different server perspectives. So it comes down to what they're looking like and what that capability is, because one will require much different much higher compute than the other one. So it depends on what that looks like. So you might then see a difference of models or different in design halls.
Okay, we are at the top of the hour. Then I'm kind of looking these two priorities now, right? Yes, goals and other things we can finalize. The metrics and comparison we can come back. For me, it feels like these two items, right? Align with the requirements and maybe start to spend some time on current PUEs. How is it done? What is included in that things, right? Given we had a discussion on requirements, we do need to have all the documents. Currently, we have problems that we need to figure out. For this, do we have anybody in this call that spend some time before that we can help here, or we want to look for somebody else to help here?
I can do some of the defining the PUEs currently being done from an European and from an UK perspective.
Okay.
If you share with me after this just a quick email,
Sure.
I will then try and put that together and come back. So we've got that information, which we can then discuss and agree if that's right or not afterwards. That's fine.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for wondering. Okay, thank you, Tim. We'll close the meeting today, and we will look forward to discussing with you next week. And also, we have a meeting tomorrow, tomorrow, 27th, right? 26th, I believe. I didn't look at my, I'm in India, right, today. Day after tomorrow, Wednesday, right? In the Portland face-to-face. There's a
Isn't that
slot for us to
tomorrow?
discuss. Is it tomorrow?
Yep.
I'm
Yeah,
just
okay, yeah,
checking.
tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah.
And Eric will present it. We will give him what we discussed so far, and one of the things that we are discussing today on defining the priority and aligning the priority, and then we will decide the next steps on that. Okay, thank you, team. We will look forward to meeting with you again next week. We'll talk to you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
folks.
you.